I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you everyone for coming this evening. We are at Myers Elementary School for those who are watching us on YouTube. So this meeting is live streamed and archived. This meeting is a meeting of the school board in public for the purpose of conducting the school corporation's business. It is not to be considered a public community meeting. There will be time for public participation as indicated by the agenda. Our mission for Portage Township Schools is to educate, empower, and inspire excellence. There is a public comment form by Dr. Alanez. If anybody would like to speak under other, please fill out the form and return it in the same place. Next, we're going to move on to student achievement. The first agenda item that we have is the Spheres Art Computer Application. Dr. Alanez?
Yes, we have this evening several of our phenomenal teachers and school employees who are here along with our fabulous students to show us what they can do with the Spiros for their art classes. So Mrs. Nadolski, would you like to?
I should have let Tom.
Sure, Mr. McDaniel.
So I'm Tom McDaniel. I'm the Innovative Learning Coach for the elementary schools, and I get to work with all 8 elementaries and work with teachers on how to use their Chromebooks and their iPads in their classrooms, but also support the maker spaces and the neat things that we have going on there. So when we find really cool ideas, we try to find little teachers who are kind of willing to use their class and to jump in and try some new projects. So one of the resources we have is called a Sphero. It is a programmable, drivable robot. We discovered they're waterproof and paint-proof, and that gave us a little spark of an idea that we got Mrs. Nadolski and Mrs. Mann and Ms. Florence to jump in over here at Myers. So they're going to tell you a little bit more about what we did.
So one day I walked into our maker space, and because it's so fun to go in there, there's so many different things that I wanted to know. What can I do with art in here? Dying to do something. This man happened to be in there already talking to Miss Florence, and I said, hey, would you be interested? What about doing something with art? Let's do a little STEAM. We hear a lot about STEM. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. What about putting art in there and doing a little STEAM? STEAM, there's a misconception that when you teach STEAM that it's one person teaching STEAM as a one lesson. It's actually supposed to be a group of professionals working together for the success of the student and creating that motivation to have them be problem solvers and team players that we need in today's workforce. So I approached Ms. Mann, and she was all about it. She was, yeah, let's do this. So we put our time together, and one of the things that I talked to Ms. Florence about was how to do the paintings with the Spiros, and how to incorporate the artist Jackson Pollock, who's an American painter. So we pulled up some things on the internet, and we thought, well, let's give this a chance. So those are the products of what happened that day. And I'm going to let Mrs. Mann talk about the classroom aspect of what we did for our STEAM project.
So we were also able to integrate it to what we were doing in the classroom. We had just started expository writing, so it lent itself perfectly because as the kids made their paintings, another center in the STEM lab, they were on the computers doing a web quest where they got to actually visit virtual galleries of Jackson Pollock paintings, and they got to start their research skills, and they got to research Jackson Pollock and complete a web quest. So it lent itself to the other standards we were working on in class. We were able to incorporate the art with the reading and the writing that we were working on in the classroom, and it all came together.
And then we connected with Ms. Florence.
Hello, for all who don't know me, I'm the technology coordinator or computer coordinator or whatever you want to call me here at Myers. And what we also did was, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term green screen. It's used in your favorite Marvel movies, Thor and Black Panther. But what we did, we took a plain green screen and we took the picture of the kids in front of the green screen, and then we kind of like we say morphed the two images together, and this is what we came up with. And each student did take their own little pictures here, which you'll be able to see when you see the demonstration here. And one thing, I'm not gonna keep you long, but I just wanna say thank you to these 3 individuals. It's kind of hard with the teachers, with all the other stuff they have to deal with, the curriculum and everything else they have going on. But I wanna thank these 3 because they're so enthusiastic in integrating technology and learning so these kids can experience that there is life outside of sports. You don't have to play sports in order to succeed. You can be a computer engineer, project manager, or artist, you know? So I just want to make that known. Thank you.
So what we're gonna do is do a little demonstration, so if you would like to walk over to this area, we are gonna have the students start painting, and we were hoping that Mr. Maletta might do a little painting with them, and let the students teach you how to use the Spiros.
Should I raise my hand? Never make eye contact.
All you.
Last one in the meeting.
We have, students, why don't you introduce yourself so they know who you are?
Hi, I'm Amaya. I am Jacob and I'm with you. I'm Cassie.
They're all 4th grade. Can anybody explain a little bit about what you're doing? Okay. Maybe show them just a little bit.
So that's considered a robot.
Yes.
For robotics.
Yes, right.
For competition.
And they're,
They get on the road, competitive road.
Okay.
this is the, how they control it and make it do what they want it to do. And
But they still code it, right?
Yes, yes.
In this case, they're gonna be driving, yes.
okay.
So one of the things, it doesn't know forward, backward, left, right, so you just saw him change this light to a little blue dot, so they have to aim it in order to, so that it's relative to where he's standing. Go ahead, guys, go ahead.
I think that's too fast.
Good stuff.
Increase the speed.
There you go. There you go.
So sometimes to overcome the stickiness of the painting, they actually have to increase the speed of the robot so it has more power so it can push through it. So that's what they just adjusted.
And in this piece, their object is to fill their space, use the color, and space, color, and texture.
There's a big old splatter.
Okay, let's switch to the other two and we have a couple new drivers here.
Yeah, so these robots are also autonomously able to be programmed, so you can actually program them to drive themselves. So one of the challenges the students have besides doing painting is they can actually drive through courses and actually have to measure and figure out how far that robot should drive forward, take a right, left, through courses like that. So that's what makes these really neat for the elementary levels, but we have them even through middle school and high school because they're just they're really nice to introduce coding and programming and showing them autonomy and robotics.
Another great particular about the STEM labs is Ms. Florence here at Myers and then Mr. Daniels, who goes to each of our elementaries. It allows for all of our students, K to 12 in various capacities, to have experiences with the robots. Maybe not through painting at a certain grade level, but through different experiences. I love when they've got the tape on the floor and they're doing.
And that's our next endeavor. So our students are starting, now that they conquered this, we're starting area and perimeter of irregular shapes. They're actually going to be going back into the STEM lab, using the robots to create, they're gonna program them to make their irregular shapes. And then they're gonna calculate the area and perimeter of what they've calculated from the app. So that'll be our next experience using these and integrating that with math in the classroom.
So Mr. Maleta right there, see if you can. You might need a little lesson though. Boys, you might need to, you might need to teach them how to drive.
Crash course.
This is how you move it around, and that's how you speed it up.
Okay.
Change the wait, you push the A button. And you want to move the A button.
So take this guy here.
Right here.
Yes, it doesn't move with it.
Just do this.
Alright.
See, it wasn't me.
Try to keep it on the canvas, we need some. Yeah.
You're perfect.
Sound purple, okay.
You're about to get it.
I know that was coming.
Yeah, that is fun.
And if you like the paintings, the bidding starts at 100. We already have battles going on. Who wants which one? On that canvas. That canvas looks a little too white.
I want to change things.
Like
Try to make it a little bit like not like as fast.
There we go.
this is that's the speed.
There you go.
Yay! Nobody puts Mr. Maleta in the corner.
It's like bumper cars.
Oh, we're in trouble. We're both stuck.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe I'll speed it up now.
I know. It's kind of difficult.
Yeah, I think we should call this the ocean wave.
The ocean wave.
Oh,
This is pretty.
okay.
Now this slows it down or speeds it
So
up?
we're doing this at all 8 elementaries.
That's
That's a goal.
Yeah,
That's
they're
a
trying to
goal.
work on it.
So
Yeah.
how many are we doing it? 2?
Right now, 2 elementaries are doing this specific activity. Amanda Sheffer at Kyle has done a different one with an app where it actually, I don't know, maybe Tom can explain it
Yeah,
because
they
he helped
had
with that.
found an app that would keep the camera lens on the iPad open longer, so it would allow more light in. And the kids were driving the Spiros around, and it created these light trail art versions that they were
On the iPad,
on
so
the
it
iPad,
was
so
more, the
they're-
art was on, more on the iPad, it wasn't.
So, you ever seen like the picture of the cars on the highway with their headlights on at dark at night, and they get that streak? That's the same idea, but we're done with the spheros. It was really cool. So,
And the great thing is the amount of collaboration between our teachers and then the support of Mr. McDaniels, who goes to each of the buildings. He's able to say, hey, have you talked to Mrs. Nadolski about this particular project? And I know you guys share, hey, look at this lesson.
Let's try it. There you go.
I think you gotta come over here closer.
Yeah, be closer to you.
well, they have Mr. Maleta, they actually have a very far range.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, 35 feet. So,
Oh, really?
Because it's Bluetooth, so it's done through Bluetooth.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
We might have to hang this one in the boardroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And yes, the paint does wash off of them, so
Yeah, we just.
That was our biggest fear.
Yeah, right.
No. That was my biggest fear.
Yeah, who figured that out?
Which one's not yours?
True leap of faith. We know they're sealed, so we knew that, so. They're messy to wash.
Okay. That was probably the. Everybody got it?
Thank you. Yeah, we all tried it. There we go. Yeah. I think it's a
Oh, it's, we have lots of speed, kind of hard. I believe it.
So students, I have a question. So students who participated, is it based on their own interests or are they selected by the teacher?
This was a class art project, so
everybody-
the students from Mrs. Main's class.
If you've been in a makerspace, you'll see that there's like, you set up different stations. So we had several on the computers researching, we had several on another set of computers doing their expository writing. We had another group over by the green screen, another group on the tables in the middle where they were creating, like with mechanical, connecting objects. And then we had a group here, so you can just rotate them. And it took about a full hour to get the case.
Any other questions? Yeah, no? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, good job. Good job.
Thank you, students. Well, once again, thank you very much for showcasing what you're doing by including art and making it STEAM into STEM, which we know as a school board is very important, not only to look at STEM, but to look at it as STEAM. So with that being said, I know there was a couple things that were mentioned about the makers space, and that's something that we do have in all 8 elementaries currently now. And Dr. Elenez, if you don't mind, would you kind of explain that space a little bit and what we do and how often the students attend that and what they are able to do in there?
We had a traditional, as you recall, computer lab with 30 desktops, and our teachers went in there once a week to incorporate computer technology, computer science into the classroom curriculum. And within that, over the years, as that has evolved and the focus on innovation and authentic learning and the ability to utilize multidisciplinary approaches to not only STEM, but as you mentioned, STEAM, Mr. DePasquale and Mr. Lesich came to me and stated specifically it was time to replace our 30 desktop unit computer labs in each building. However, they had this concept of the innovative learning lab, where instead it's stations that include, as stated, science, technology, engineering, and math. And we've had a lot of our art teachers, and not just our art teachers, but performing arts teachers who have really embraced this concept, have sought professional development, and then also with Mr. McDaniels as our elementary innovative learning coach who goes to each of the elementaries, has collaborated with our teachers to teach them how to utilize the space, how to embrace the innovation and allow students to be creative, to allow them to collaborate, to communicate with their peers, and ultimately be able to have that ability to truly bring the curriculum to life throughout their standards. With this in mind, they now still go a minimum of once a week, each classroom. And we have a myriad of technology involved in those rooms. So as stated, this is not something that those robots are only seeing the hands of an after-school club. This is every single student in the school who has these opportunities, developmentally appropriate for the curriculum, as well as their ability to handle and maneuver different things, to code different things. But it's just been a great addition. It was very organic in the district, and it just took some creativity on the part of the adults to just explore. And for the kids, as we've learned through different conferences at the state and national level, it's not the students that we have to convince that this is the way that learning takes place. It's very natural for them. So as soon as the concepts were presented by the directors and embraced, they developed the professional development that it would take, and they have provided the continuous support that it requires. And also, Mrs. Williams has found some funding for different things, and that's been extremely helpful to make sure we have a lot of the technology in there. And the kids, I mean, the learning outcomes were the return on investment, and as you can see, the curriculum is just, it's coming to life.
It's very important because when you can actually incorporate science, technology, engineering, and math into an art class in an elementary, that's what we want our kids to be able to focus on so that when they do get into middle school and high school, those components are easier for them to comprehend and to understand, and it's not something new. And as Mrs. Nadolski also said, that her job as an art teacher is not only to teach art today, it's also to co-work with her other teachers to how they make art into these different projects. So we really appreciate that. And with that being said, talking about STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, we're going to introduce the next agenda item, which is Project Lead the Way grant winner, and that's going to be the high school principal. Mr. Stills, could you please come up? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome, Ms. Finley. Didn't get a chance to meet you last week.
How are you?
Great, thank you. Well, under the weather, so I might sound a little funny. Talking about Mr. Ruskoski, he's kind of a jack of all trades in art on the east side. Dabbles a little bit in construction, engineering, technology, computer science, and he's a big part of our robotics team. He applied, I think, through Project Lead the Way and Amazon. I'd asked that he come up and give a presentation of his application for those.
Thank you, Mr. Stills. Members of the board, Dr. Allen, thank you for allowing me to be here today. As Mr. Stills said, my name is John Ruskoski. I am now in my second year here at the district. I am in my 8th year of teaching. I'm involved with robotics. Like I said, I do construction, Project Lead the Way, pretty much a jack of all trades. And one of the things that both myself and Mr. Kappas, who has a large hand in this, was we identified a severe weakness in our STEM curriculum, or STEAM, as I should say now. And we noticed that there was a massive lack in the computer science pathway. And as you all know, the Indiana Department of Education now requires graduation pathways, I believe, starting with next year's freshman. Correct, Dr. Allen? And one of the pathways is computer science. So I approached Mr. Kappas and I was like, well, hey, wait a minute here. We have robotics, that's in the tech department. We do Project Lead the Way. Project Lead the Way now has a computer science pathway. Why are we not kind of jumping on board with this? Because I looked at it as an opportunity to enhance our robotics program. And then after doing more research, and I talked with students, talked with different teachers, I really found out that there was a massive disconnect between the middle school levels of computer science and the high school levels of computer science. Is this the remote? Okay. I actually never used one, which is kind of cool. Okay, so our past computer science program, when I did a little research and dug into it, we are actively pursuing an innovators and makers curriculum for computer science, which would be the 8th grade. Okay, and the way that Project Lead the Way does the middle school curriculum, it breaks it off into, I believe it is 6 different modules that we now have spanned from 7 to 8, and we are now bringing it down to 6th grade as well. And the beauty of that is now that we'll have Project Lead the Way down to 6th grade level, we are now eligible for national recognition from Project Lead the Way.
Hold on.
I talked with Miss Elkire and Miss Boyers, who's in the business department, and pretty much the state of our computer science program was our students didn't see computer science until they were sophomores. So there was a full year gap between 8th grade where they did robotics, they did the computer science, they did the different languages, and then they did nothing freshman year. And now all of a sudden they're expected to go in as sophomores and do computer science, and they were just completely lost. I also found out that we lost the AP after the one teacher left, I believe in 2014 or 2015. And then we also did not have the junior level computer science course, which also we lost the AP for that. And this was all done by one individual. And he went on to bigger and better things, so we kind of lost that. So, obviously, last bullet there was not a comprehensive pathway. And when I mean comprehensive, the way I interpret it is not just 9 through 12, but for us 6 through 12, and then obviously we can stem this all the way down to K through 12, which Project Lead the Way actually does do K through 12, both engineering and computer science. So just the needs issue, I kind of already went through these. There was no coherent pathway. It all came down to our students just were not understanding computer science. They were going in, they were sitting in front of a computer and just kind of doing this. And to them, I mean, I can't even sit behind my computer and do this. I go crazy. I have to be up and moving and things like that. So they just were not understanding it. And from my standpoint, the growing number of jobs in the computer field, it's just growing exponentially. Everything we do involves computers, coding, and things like that. And there is a massive opportunity for our students just right here in our backyard if we just tap into that. And we obviously talked about the new graduation requirements. And then what's really neat about this is kind of a joint venture between not only the PLTW department, but the business department as well. So the industries that just utilize computer science, I mean, there's a whole slew of them. Artificial intelligence is massive. Computer security, government, social services, healthcare, agriculture, financial, machine learning. A couple of our robotics students, their parents work for utilities, and they even said, you know, they are looking for PLC programmers, and they can't find them, so they have to outsource that, and it costs the company money. Obviously, in education, your traditional industries, many of these exist here in our backyard. Okay. This was just kind of, I'm sorry, my eyes are not very good. Is there a way to make that bigger? I guess I could walk up to it. I don't need to use the mic, do I? Okay. I think I'm loud enough. So here's kind of where we're going. 6th grade is going to start out with what we call PLTW App Creators. That is actually in process through an ArcelorMittal grant in conjunction with PLTW. So that, I believe, was finished, was submitted, and now we're just waiting to hear back from them. Okay. The goal there was essentially to expose the students to developing solutions to authentic problems, and they're actually going to develop mobile apps in that class. Okay. 7th grade, that's where they get into automation and robotics. So there they're going to explore how computer control systems, computer programming, all works with the automation process. 8th grade is your computer science for innovators and makers, and that's where they're going to blend the hardware design and the software development. So how does the software and the hardware talk to each other? How do they work together? By the time they reach me in 9th grade, and I will have all of the introduction to computer science, so all 9th graders, this is also open to 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, but the majority will be 9th graders. That will be the computer science essentials. Here we're going to explore major topics, and this is where we develop the computational thinking skills, the logic flow. For instance, your spheros, it's more than just move, turn, roll. They're going to break that down into the most elementary building blocks, because that's how your computers work. Good news for that course completely paid for by a PLTW grant. 10th grade would be their computer science principles, and this would be the first level AP class that they would be able to take as sophomores. We are also offering it to incoming freshmen if they exhibit a B or better in algebra. And the reason for that is they have to be able to keep up with the mathematical logic that goes with the AP course. Okay? That course was also paid for by a PLTW grant that we got. So that is also on the books for next year. That grant was awarded just now, spring of 2018. That course will focus primarily on Python. They will develop apps, and they will also get into simulations. So they start analyzing simulations, developing mathematical models to solve real-world problems. Where we're going with this is kind of the next phase is going to be the Computer Science A, which was the old Computer Science 2. That will be also AP. Okay? We are working on a grant proposal for next year for that, so we have to wait for the next grant cycle to start, but we kind of already have an idea of what to expect. This is where they're going to design and implement different interfaces. They do a lot of databases, and the ultimate goal is they're going to be able to create their own multi-level game. Okay, and it could be something as simple that you play on your phone to one that you can actually essentially do on your, like an Xbox or something along those types. So they'll have the knowledge to do that. And then if they go through the entire pathway, they'll be able, as 12th graders, to take a capstone course which deals with cybersecurity. Okay, and that's kind of like, that's a really cool course. I'm excited with that one. They're going to learn essentially how to hack. They're going to learn where the vulnerabilities in your home router systems are. I know some of the parents are like, I'm not sure I want my kid knowing that, but nonetheless, that's kind of the big thing of where they're going with that. Okay. So we kind of sat down. This is just the pathway that we're going to take. So whether or not we are going the AP route versus their traditional route, we now will have a cohesive computer science pathway that will fulfill the graduation requirements. And teachers to teach them, which is also good. Okay, so where are we at? Just to give you an update. Everything so far has been paid for by grants, no cost to the school district. Okay, 6th grade is in process, so we're hoping to have that back soon. 9th and 10th grade options are ready to go. They are on the books. We have students signed up in those classes. From what I was told, I believe I will have 2 AP classes and then 3, possibly 4 intro classes. So we're looking at roughly 150 students in the computer science pathway for next year. We're discussing the 11th and 12th grade options, so the Computer Science 2 and the capstone course. Okay, and we also do a very good job, I believe, in identifying and targeting specific students that would fit that computer science pathway. We do our middle school visits, so we go down there. Obviously, we work hand in hand with guidance, teacher recommendations, and this works hand in hand with our robotics program, both at the middle school levels, the elementary levels, and then obviously the high school levels. Okay, and we have a last bit of good news. Recently, Portage High School was awarded and accepted into Amazon's Future Engineering Program.
Yes, that's awesome.
So this is kind of a big deal, I think, for twofold. Number one, I think this solves one of the issues that we had the first time we did computer science when we lost the teacher. Our goal is to pull a teacher from the business department, and we're going to go ahead and Amazon will pay for all of their training, all of their curriculum development and supplies. So in the event that we run into a situation, something happens to me or anyone else, we will not lose the ability to continue this pathway. Okay, so that was the goal with that. It will also work in conjunction with all of the PLTW courses. And then obviously we talked about recruiting the business teachers. So to me, I'm excited about this. I'm a huge computer science nut. I pretty much grew up doing computers in college. I kind of took care of everybody's computers on the dorms under our IT department and at our dorms. Don't tell Purdue. But I believe this is huge because to me, computer science is just as important as English. And we need to do I think moving forward, a much better job. Let's try to incorporate computer science for every single student. I know it's very hard with 2,500 students at the high school levels, but like I said, I think this is important just as your English, just as your math. I tell my students all the time, they used to say math is the universal language. It's now becoming computer science. And that's extremely evident, and I witness it firsthand when we go to our world robotics competitions. Our robotics teams are working hand in hand with students from China, Japan, France, Syria even was there last year for the World Robotic Competition. They may not speak the same language, but they figure out how to work together through the computer science, through the coding language, and it's really, really neat. So if you ever do get a chance to go down to Louisville, we did have our college team just qualified for Worlds, so we will have our VexU team down there for Worlds. We're hoping to get at least one of our 4 state qualifying teams down to Worlds, down to Louisville, end of April. So, I mean, we invite you down there. It is a massive, awesome experience, and the kids love it. So, thank you for your time. If you have any questions or anything like that, I'm more than happy to entertain them.
Do you mind going back by the microphone? I want to say thank you very much for this presentation. Computer science is very, very important to education. At one time, I remember there was statistics that said less than 10% of high schools offered a computer science class, less than 10% in the U.S. So obviously, it took more than just districts to make that important. So it had to be from the legislature, and it started off with ESSA. And so ESSA thought that it was important, so now this is why it's mandatory to have in every school district across the country. And it's good to see that companies such as Amazon is funding grants such as this because these companies outsource into different countries for their employees. And they have said to school districts for many, many years in the U.S., help us, give us students who can actually work for us. Do not produce students who we cannot train. So with computer science, it's not only important for college readiness, but it's also important for career. So you can go into the trades and you can use computer science. And sir, I want to thank you for looking at our deficiencies in finding that and realizing that, hey, we have a disconnect and we have more than one disconnect. And you know what? I think it's important enough that I'm going to fix that. And not only am I going to fix it, I'm going to look for funding to do that. I appreciate that. That is phenomenal. And what you've done with this and what you've done with this grant, I want to applaud you because career and college readiness is exactly what you're doing. And the Project Lead the Way program is a great program, and we have said this numerous times, but I want to thank you for making us a national level and then also at a global level, because we know that as a school district, our competition is not only nationally, it's also going to be globally. And if we don't look at that as very, very important, we need to. So once again, thank you, sir, for what you've done, and I really appreciate it. You went above and beyond what you needed to do in You've been with us for 6 years.
2?
2 years.
2?
2 years.
2 years, I'm
2 years.
sorry.
2.
Well,
He's taught 8 years, but he's been with us for 2.
you're gonna be with us a lot longer. So thank you.
That's our plan.
That's our plan too. Yeah, that is, very good, so thank you.
Thank you, members of the board, Dr. Allen, thank you very much.
I do have,
Yeah.
Madam President, I do have a question.
Yes.
And it really probably relates to, should be directed towards Dr. Alanis. And I know that the pathway is specifically towards computer science relates to the AP. Is there a plan to have a dual credit partnership? Because we know that AP, our students don't necessarily nourish and flourish with the AP. So are we looking at a partnership with a university or college as well?
That is actually something that we have looked into. Right now, Project Lead the Way, everything for the engineering aspect is dual credited through Ivy Tech.
Yes.
I did look into the dual credit for the sophomore level computer science. It would be through Purdue, I believe it's North Central. Is that the one?
Northwest.
Northwest, okay.
Yeah.
I used to call it Purdue Kelly then, so I
I
can't
know,
remember
right?
which one's which. I believe guidance came back and said we could do that, but they have to charge the students then $300. So we kind of steered away from that because they said in the past that was an issue, the students just didn't want to pay it. So we're actively working, trying to figure out a way around that.
And John, there's also some work with Ivy Tech regarding some of the cybersecurity things with
Okay.
dual credit. Dr. Stevens has set up some things. We've got a meeting coming up March 11th to steer that and look
Okay.
at some of those other things so that we can help you guys
Okay.
problem solve that.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say, Dr. Allen, is would you make sure that he has an administrator, somebody from the central office, working
Yes.
with him to give him best practices or leading practices to move forward with this? Because your central office staff has been out to different school districts, or they know, research base, whereas maybe somebody typically in the guidance department or
Yes.
assistant principal might not have the right answers or the resources that might be available to you. So we're gonna make sure that you do get those right answers. And if there is a charge, what can we do if it's important enough for you to move forward? Those type of things that you need to have answers for.
Awesome, thank you very much, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yes, once again, thank you for everything.
I would like to thank you on behalf of the 150 students. I wish it would have been probably 500, but at this point, I thank you, on their behalf and their parents' families' behalf.
Thank you.
Good start.
Great start.
Thank you,
Great
Amazon
start.
and Oxford Middle, for supporting and all the hard work you do to fundraise for this.
Thank you, I mean, I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it, so I just love doing this stuff, so thank you very much for the opportunity, thank you for bringing me here, and, also, I couldn't do it without Mr. Kappas. So, Mr. Kappas is the one that kind of went out and found me, and we developed a relationship years ago, and he worked hard to get me over here, so.
Yes, he did.
Glad you're here.
So, is that it?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a few other brief things to mention in John's PowerPoint. If you noticed, he referenced on numerous occasions, and this is covered by a PLTW grant, and this is covered by a grant, and this is covered by a grant. Mrs. Williams, as you know, writes our grants, and she has worked diligently with Mr. Kappas to make sure that we have this, where do we have holes in the curriculum. I'm very pleased Dr. Stevens has worked with the middle school principals, Mr. Kappas and Mrs. Williams, to make sure not only do we have this then at the middle school level, but now when we move it into 6th grade with the opportunity to possibly receive this grant for 6th grade, then that will mean every 6th, 7th, and 8th grader gets one semester every school year of Project Lead the Way. Right now, every 7th and 8th grader gets a semester. We want to, just as we do not allow students to opt out of core curriculum, we're not opting out of Project Lead the Way. We are embracing this as an opportunity, again, with STEM and STEAM, and making sure that we have those pathways and those interests tapped in students, and also preparing them even in some fields that they don't necessarily think they'd ever be interested in. But this funding source has been huge through the grants, and I know that there's a lot of hours in the evening that I'll leave and I'll see Mrs. Williams working with Mr. Kappas, trying to get some more of these opportunities into the district with Arsler, John looking at this with Amazon, and just continuing to build that program. And then, as I stated, Dr. Stevens working with our middle school principals so that we see how this actually becomes that authentic piece of distributing through the curriculum for math, for science, and putting it in an opportunity for students to get the skills they need through the collaboration process, the creativity, as we talk about all the time, the 4 C's. So again, just thank you to everyone who has diligently worked to make sure that our kids have these opportunities in the curriculum.
And Dr. Alanis, I have a question. With our PTLW teachers or a computer science teacher per se, I know that the state of Indiana changed their education programs at the university level to where if you wanted to go into a math or science high school teacher, you no longer typically were in the education department. You were still an education department student. However, you did get a degree you had to do almost typically the same amount of math that an engineering student would have to do, or same thing with science. And that has deterred a lot of students in the education department from not pursuing that specific degree at the high school level. It's just so tough. And then I'm the same way. My daughter was going to do it, and I sat there and I listened to it down at Purdue with her, Lafayette. And I'm like, why would you take all these math classes? I just specifically asked, if you went into mechanical engineering, what other math classes would you be taking besides this for making a third less the money as a high school math teacher? Because she wanted to go be a math teacher because Portage High School math teacher inspired her to do that. And it was just tough. And she was one of the first students to even be part of that, even though she got into the education department. She was kind of in with the engineering and the math majors. So with that being said, I think it's going to be tougher and tougher to get that level of teachers. So what are we doing with the project Lead the Way in the teacher? That's just an additional certification. And they can just be I don't want to say a basic teacher, but they don't have to have a specific degree. Is that correct?
I don't know that to be the case for sure. I can get some further background. I know the credentialing of our specific teachers is more significant, but I can find out exactly what is the minimal requirement of that, and is it just additional training? I can't recall off the top of my head.
And then how is the new, not so much new, but the state legislature, the new law for education at the high school level for science and math, how is that going to impact us in the future with getting teachers? Because it's definitely going to, and I do know that the state legislature has looked at increasing their specific pay and be able to give stipends to those type of individuals. So then I'm curious, I know it costs us a lot of money to send a teacher to Project Lead the Way. Those Project Lead the Way teachers are very committed in going outside of the box for a different certification. Then are we able to give them a stipend?
Okay.
I know that that's something that the state legislature, I don't know if they passed it, I can't remember or not, but I think we're able to if we could look at
I do believe we are.
Yeah, I do too, and I think that's important.
Okay.
And especially if we're gonna have somebody who's just a teacher in Project Lead the Way, is gonna be looking from 6th grade all the way to 12th grade, and to commingle and to get this fluid and to get it working. We deserve something. Next, with that being said, we're gonna move on to another great program at the high school, and it originated at the high school with Sandra Porter Phillips with Teen Court was brought in, and it has grown into a restorative justice program, which is K through 12 at this time. So I'd like to welcome you.
Hello. Hello. Thanks for inviting us here tonight. My name is Sandra Porter Phillips, and I've been doing restorative justice. I was trained in restorative justice 3 years ago. I went to Chicago and got trained in restorative justice, but was doing restorative justice all alone and just didn't realize it. But with restorative justice, we provide our goal is to restore and repair harm that is caused by wrongdoing. The offender knows what he or she have done wrong. That's our students. And, you know, you realize that you offended somebody in school, you hurt someone's feelings, you hit somebody that you had no business hitting, so that's what that means. So the victim explains what must be done to make me feel right, to make me feel better, what you can do. You can either apologize, we can go in the room and talk about it. You can tell, you know, I can tell you why that hurt me so much and why I feel that way. Both parties feeling heard is valuable. It's very important. Justice have been restored. We implemented the program in 40 schools, and we use Restorative Circle. That's when we get together and we talk about ourselves in a group. And I say ourselves because kids feel better when they're not just the victims. So I tell them about my week, you know, and sometimes my week is not the best. And, you know, I start off with circles when I talk. I talk about what I've been really upset about during the week, and we go over how I could have did something better. I tell them about I got bumped in the grocery store and I really gave that person a nasty look. I didn't have to give that person a nasty look. It was just a bad week, you know? So we talk about those things. We have restorative group. That's where we have kids that have had harm in homes. Harm that needs to be repaired, need to be discussed, need to be talked about. They need somebody there just to be a mentor for them. We also have the TRIBE program in our school, which is the alternative program that I go to twice a week. I go on Mondays. That's because they've been at home all weekend and have done some things that they need to talk about, or some things have happened to them over the weekend. We know that our kids are not just in alternative school just because they want to go to alternative school. They're in alternative school for a reason. So we have a morning program and we have an afternoon program. We have about 20 kids in each class for our alternative school. So we're looking at a total of 40 kids. Sometimes that TRIBE group can be pretty boisterous. Everybody wants to talk at one time. Well, we have a talking stick. Everybody can't talk in it. Even if I have to use my glasses, I said, if you don't have those glasses in your hand, it's not your turn to talk. You know, so we have, you know, we learn that we cannot talk out of turn. Everybody needs a turn to say how they feel. Some of our students in that program are either pregnant or they've got caught with vaping or they just not cooperative in a regular classroom setting. We're not kicking them out anymore. We're trying to work with our kids. And sometimes I have to like pull certain ones out and just talk to them personally. They don't want everybody to know what happened to them. That's okay. Sometimes I don't want everybody to know what happened to me. So a principal receives a behavior referral for a student. The principal assigns the punishment. That doesn't mean the kid doesn't get punished when they get in trouble in school. And what I mean by that is, like if a kid get caught with a vape, and they still get punished, and they get their punishment from the principal, and then the principal calls me down and refer that kid to me so I can have some one-on-one conversations with him. Or I have two students here that had a conflict with some other girls in class, and I mean, they was going at it, and I call them down one at a time. And when I talk to them, we talk about it, and I say, do you mind if I bring the other young lady in so we can talk about it? So we can figure out what we could have done different. Why this argument didn't have to escalate to this point, you know? And if I feel that we all don't need to be in the same room, I will not put us in the same room. I just will not do that. Because I don't want a person's feelings to get hurt even more than what they already are. You know, so student offenders are initially met with separately, and I just said that each student presents a series of questions. I have a series of questions, and sometimes I don't use those questions because it just depends on each student is individually. Upon leaving the circle, students take an action that shows that they're willing to correct their behavior. And if they're not willing to correct their behavior, I go back to the principal and I say, hey, that didn't work out so well. Maybe we need to have a further punishment or take further action at that point. But 99% of the circles that we have had with our students have worked. I'm not gonna say 100, but 99% once we meet have worked. I have a young lady here, her name is Jada. Jada came in with horrible attitude. I mean, it was just bad.
I had to walk her back.
I said, get out. I said, just get out, Jada. You know, I said, because if you don't want to work with us, we don't want you here if you can't get yourself together. I'm leaving. So Jada walked out. So a few minutes later, I seen Jada coming down the way. I said, you ready to work with us? Yes. You know, but you have to give them time to think about it. You can't let them take total control. You have to take some control in your circle, because if you don't, and everybody got an attitude, you got a mess, you know? So, myself and Miss McGizzy have been a lot of help with me restorative. You know, we all have something to learn, but, you know, every day, we get new kids. We get new kids that want to come and be a part of our circle, that want to be a part of our group, that wants to come in and talk about what their issues are at home. You know, I personally have my own personal story, and I tell them, I'm not